On a calm winter morning in 1943, the SS Schenectady sat peacefully at dock in Portland, Oregon. No enemy, no storm, just silence. Then, a sharp crack tore through the harbor air. Within seconds, the ship's massive steel hull split clean in two. The bow sagged one way, the stern the other. It looked like an invisible hand had sliced it apart. She wasn't the first or the last. The SS John P. Gaines broke apart in calm seas. The SSSO Manhattan, a tanker built the same way, fractured so severely her crew leapt overboard. By 1944, over 2,500 Liberty ships had suffered serious cracking. 19 of them literally snapped in half. 3 vanished at sea, breaking so fast no one could even radio for help. These weren't battle losses. They were spontaneous, unexplained failures, ships that seemed to destroy themselves. The United States had built its wartime fleet at breathtaking speed, but now it was tearing itself apart, and no one knew why. But the real cause of these disasters, and the person who discovered it, would come from a place no one expected. After Pearl Harbor, America faced an impossible math problem. The Navy needed hundreds of new cargo ships, and fast. Traditional shipbuilding took 8 months per vessel. The war couldn't wait. Then came Henry Kaiser, a man who'd never built a ship before, but who promised a revolution. Instead of crafting ships one piece at a time, Kaiser proposed mass production. He built enormous yards in Richmond, California, and Portland, Oregon, assembly lines for ships. Welding replaced riveting, prefabrication replaced hand fitting, and Detroit's car factories became his blueprint. The results were mind-bending. Liberty ships were launched in weeks, sometimes days. The SS Robert E. Perry was built in just 4 days and 15 hours. Newsreels hailed it as a miracle of modern industry. Rosie the Riveters became icons of national pride, though most were actually welders now, not riveters at all. The Liberty ships flooded the Atlantic, carrying supplies and hope. But within months, something was terribly wrong. Cracks appeared in their hulls. Some bent, some snapped, and what began as a few mysterious fractures soon became a pattern of disaster. America's miracle fleet was breaking faster than it was built, and nobody knew why. The problem wasn't the welds. It wasn't the steel. Every test said the materials were fine. Engineers pored over blueprints and found nothing unusual. The ships were breaking in calm seas, in harbors, under no visible stress. Committees formed. Metallurgists examined fractured plates under microscopes. Naval architects argued over theories. Was the steel too brittle? Were the welders unskilled? Was there sabotage? No one could find a clear culprit. Meanwhile, sailors began to fear their own vessels. They called them ships with a death wish. Men slept fully clothed, ready to abandon ship at any moment. Every groan of the hull in cold water made hearts stop. What no one realized was that the problem wasn't hidden deep in the design. It wasn't even in the steel itself. It was in the way the ships were built. And the person who saw it wasn't an engineer or a scientist. She was a welder working the night shift. Her name was Bessie Hamill. She worked long, cold nights at Kaiser's Richmond Yard No. 3, one of thousands of women who stepped into shipyard jobs after the men went to war. Bessie had been welding hull plates for 8 months. She knew how steel behaved under her torch, how it shifted, flexed, and cooled. And something didn't add up. Every night, she watched her team follow a welding sequence that made no sense. They started at the edges of steel plates and welded straight through to the end, never stopping, never alternating. When the metal cooled, it warped and twisted. She could see the stress building into the structure. When she brought it up, her foreman waved her off. "You're a welder, not an engineer." But Bessie didn't stop. On her own time, she made test plates, welding some in the official order, others in the way she thought made sense, from the center outward, alternating sides. Her results were undeniable. The standard method left plates bent and under tension. Her way, perfectly flat, stress-free. Finally, she went over her supervisor's head, demanding a meeting with the yard's engineers. It could have cost her her job, but instead it changed history. Because when Kaiser's engineers saw what she discovered, everything they thought they knew about welding came crashing down. Kaiser ordered tests comparing the standard welding method to Bessie's. The difference was staggering. Traditional welds locked in 30,000 pounds per square inch of internal stress. Bessie's center outward sequence cut that down to 12,000. Same steel, same welds, just a different order. For the first time, engineers understood what had been happening. When welders ran long, straight seams, the steel expanded under heat, then contracted unevenly as it cooled. The surrounding metal resisted, trapping enormous tension inside the plates. At warm temperatures, that tension stayed dormant. But when those ships entered the freezing North Atlantic, the steel became brittle, more like glass than metal. A small crack at a corner or hatch could trigger a chain reaction, racing through the hull faster than a man could blink. Liberty's ships weren't cursed, they were overstressed. They carried invisible fault lines baked into their construction. Bessie's discovery didn't just explain the failures. It offered the first real solution. But adopting it meant tearing apart the most successful industrial operation in wartime America. And that was a risk Henry Kaiser wasn't sure the government would forgive. In early 1944, Henry Kaiser made a decision that stunned Washington. He halted production at one of his busiest shipyards. He wasn't quitting, he was rebuilding. Every step of the Liberty ship process would be redesigned using Bessie Hamel's sequencing method. Welders were retrained. Blueprints were redrawn. Hull corners were rounded instead of square to reduce stress points. And the steel itself was upgraded, stronger, more flexible in cold weather. It was a logistical nightmare in the middle of a global war. Critics called Kaiser reckless. Newspapers mocked the slowdown. Congress started whispering about investigations. But Kaiser didn't care about headlines. He cared about the men sailing those ships. He bet everything, his reputation, his company, even his legacy, on a simple idea. That building right was more important than building fast. And that gamble would lead to one of the greatest engineering turnarounds in history. The first results came fast. Kaiser's redesigned vessels, called Victory ships, were unlike anything the world had seen. Every weld had a numbered sequence. Every section was built separately, then stress-relieved in massive ovens. Hull designs were smoother, rounded, reinforced with riveted crack arresters. The first Victory ship took 18 days to build, slower than the old records. Critics sneered. Then the next one took 16, then 11. By June 1944, Kaiser's team built the SS Benjamin Warner, a fully equipped combat cargo ship, in just 5 days and 11 hours. And for the first time since the Liberty program began, not one weld cracked. Victory ships were faster, stronger, and nearly unbreakable. The miracle wasn't speed anymore, it was perfection. And soon, these new ships would prove their worth under fire. Victory ships rolled off the lines just in time for the final push of World War II. They carried ammunition to Normandy, fuel to Okinawa, and supplies across submarine-infested seas. The difference was night and day. Liberty's ships limped through missions, their crews haunted by the fear of splitting apart. Victory's ships sliced through icy waters at 15 knots, fully loaded, fearless. One Victory ship hit a mine off Okinawa. The hull tore, but the crack stopped cold at the first riveted joint. She limped home and was repaired within a week. A Liberty ship hit under the same conditions broke in two and sank in 14 minutes. Crew morale soared. Sailors said serving on a Victory felt like riding a battleship. They trusted the steel beneath their boots again. Between 1944 and 1945, 531 Victory ships entered service. Not a single one suffered catastrophic failure. 0. The war was still raging, but the battle for the ocean's backbone had already been won. When the war ended, the headlines celebrated generals and admirals. Bessie Hamel's name never appeared in any of them. She went home quietly, her contribution buried under the label of improved welding practices. But her discovery shaped the world in ways she never saw. In 1947, the American Welding Society published a new structural code, center-outward sequencing, mandatory stress relief, and temperature control, all based on her method. Every bridge, pipeline, and skyscraper since has followed those rules. The Trans-Alaska Pipeline, carrying hot oil through frozen tundra, used her techniques. The Golden Gate Bridge's seismic upgrades followed her stress relief model. Even nuclear reactors, where one bad weld could be catastrophic, rely on her sequencing principles. Whenever engineers talk about fabrication stress, they're using the language she created. She turned welding from a craft into a science. And she did it all without a degree, without fame, and without credit. Bessie Hamill died in 1987 in quiet anonymity. Her obituary said only that she'd worked in wartime shipyards. But every safe weld, every standing bridge, every ship that doesn't break apart, carries her fingerprint. Her story changed how we think about engineering itself. Before her, design and construction were separate worlds. After her, engineers learned that how you build something matters as much as what you design. Kaiser's greatest act wasn't building ships. It was stopping long enough to listen. He trusted a night shift welder over entire committees of experts. And that decision saved lives, ships, and perhaps the war effort itself. Today, every major manufacturing system, Lean, Six Sigma, total quality management, is built on the same idea. Listen to the people who see the work up close. Because sometimes, the person who changes the world isn't in a lab or an office. She's standing behind a welding torch, watching the steel twist and daring to ask, why are we doing it this way?